Guys, the YouTube algorithm has been pretty wonky here lately, especially when it comes to the monetization, so I can afford to keep doing these things and bringing it to you guys. So if you don't mind, hit that like button now at the beginning of this video, just so the likes kind of corroborate with the overall views for the video, just to see if that changes anything with the algorithm. If you haven't already, consider subscribing as well, and we'll get on to the video. What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Chris, this is 4K Motoring, and today we've got another Ducati video for you. For those of you that have been keeping up, we just did a 3,000-mile road trip from Raleigh, North Carolina to Austin, Texas for the Moto-GP race at Circuit of the Americas, and we just have right about 12,000 miles on this bike in general. This is a 2022 Ducati Multistrada V4s. It has overall been a fantastic bike with only a couple minor complaints, really, and I've had pretty much no major issue with it in those 12,000 miles in a little over a year I've had it. So if you saw that clip in the intro, you now know we have a little bit of body damage. Luckily, very little to our bike. We did bend up one of the ASV levers. Luckily, they have the warranty. It is getting replaced free of charge, so that's being taken care of. Otherwise, the bike really is in pretty good shape. Nothing else touched the ground. There's no marks anywhere else. There's a little scuff right on the tip of this winglet, but nothing else hit the ground. Maybe a little bit of scuffing here. I don't know if that's from just cornering or from the fall, but the bags did a really good job of absorbing the impact. And unlike the previous generation Multistrada, which I did drop a couple times, this seemed to hold out well, at least from that little low speed tip over. And nothing on the mounting hardware or anything really got cracked, broken, or suffered any sort of damage. So I really do appreciate Ducati making this bike a little bit more rugged and a little bit better built than the previous. And these Ducati accessory handguards are a must-have. They did save a lot of stuff on the handlebars without a doubt. We were already planning on upgrading to some crash bars, and that was as a result of the long road trips I've been doing on this bike, just having something to mount maybe some highway pegs on to stretch out and some additional lighting, because I do have a couple issues with the lights on this bike, especially the beam patterns when you're in mountain type roads and it's dark out. Not quite optimal. They're great for on-road, not so much for twisties or off-road. So we want to mount a little bit extra lighting to this bike as well. I've been looking at different options. Down at Coda, was lucky enough to be in Ducati Island, saw a bunch of other Ducati Multistrada V4s down there with various different accessories, and a lot had the Ducati factory crash bars on them, and then there's a couple other aftermarket ones that I saw. None of them I really loved a whole lot. What I ended up finding on eBay, thankfully, is from Givi, however you guys pronounce it, I normally say Givi, a set of crash bars. These are actually some of the cheaper crash bars out there. They're cheaper than the Ducati factory ones, but I think they flow a little bit better, and from at least the very few pictures I found on them, they tend to kind of flow with the curve of these winglets down there, and I think they're going to look pretty good and offer plenty of mounting locations for accessories. So we're going to go ahead and install this. I don't think it's going to be a complicated install, and hopefully add a little bit more protection and functionality to this V4 Multistrada. So now that we've got this unboxed, I'll say it was very well packaged from Italy to come over. We can see the overall shape of the two crash guards, and what they have is a pretty decent set of instructions that shows what all you have as far as exactly what sizes and what amounts of things you have. There is another list here that also includes the size of the tools that you'll need, and you can check the screw length on that gauge. Very nice to include. It does have pictures of the left side instructions, as well as 2 pages for the right side instructions. It looks like we're going to have to go ahead and take this cover and maybe these 2 bolts off like we did when we did our exhaust installation. Hopefully this is a pretty easy installation. Everything fits correctly like it's supposed to. If it does, I think this is going to be a great addition to this bike and an easy one to do at home. So before you start either side, what they want you to do first is to remove your skid plate. This is something we did for the exhaust installation and when I did the oil change, so it's a very easy thing to do. We have 1 bolt here in the rear that gets taken out, and I found that to be a T40 Torx. And then there is one additional smaller bolt right there. I believe that's going to be a 4mm hex that'll come out. And we do that on both sides. There is a little bendable holder holding some rubber pipes down there that will have to come out. In getting started for this kit, I am pretty impressed with the parts list that's included. And they're very detailed here of exactly what should be included. And when we lay it all out, it is exactly what's shown, and they give great detail on what parts are which parts. So following along, although this is a pretty simple document, it should be very easy to do. We're going to go ahead and get started on the left side of the bike, as that's going to be a little simpler. What it's required is to mount this extra bracket right here. So we're going to mount this bracket up first using the hardware that's included and easily described here. We have it set aside. This should be all we need. The only thing I really find problematic is that I can't find any torque specs for these, so I'm just trying to match the bolts that come out to the bolts that go in and just make sure they're all pretty snug. What comes out of here are these two factory bolts, and they are 12mm, require kind of a thin wall socket, but 12mm will come out, and you're replacing them with the M8 by 50 bolts here. You're putting a spacer in the back, and then these bolts here, and then you're going to get two of the M10 by 20s that are going in the, basically the engine block, the two open threaded ports that are in there. Hopefully they're clean. It goes into those, so these are bolting to the motor. So now we have two open new mounting points for these engine guards that this plate is providing. Everything is screwed in. These all fit in by a 6mm hex socket, and that secures all these. And that should be all that we need on that side to mount the actual crash guard. And that was a pretty easy install. All that is required, we are using this step right here, which shows that we need a number 11, which is the M10 by 60mm. That's the silver bolt that we have. We're going to use a washer and a lock washer for that one, as well as the large spacer. That is going to go in this top section. And then for the bottom, we have these two bolts here. If we focus, there we go. We got these two bolts for the bottom. And those are going to be the M8 by 20 bolts with lock washers on them. And this top one here is going to use an 8mm hex, while the bottom one is going to use a 5mm hex to screw in. We have our left side mounted. We can see the protection it provides. If we look sideways on the bike, we can see how far it sticks out. It sticks out past the bodywork here, which some of the others I've found do not. And from the side, the curves seem to mesh pretty well with the overall design of the bike, which I do like. It provides us a couple flat spots to mount things, and it does appear like it's pretty stable. Before you get the other side on, make sure you remount the skid plate. And for the top bolts, we're going to remove these little plugs that are in there. These are the factory plugs that go in between your two winglets down there. And it's going to be what screws in the top bolt to your skid plate normally. We're going to remove those. That little teeny tiny threaded thing is also a cut out 6mm hex. So you can remove that, and you have this big threaded piece comes out. Allows you to mount in this crossbar here on both sides. It goes on the outside of the skid plate mounts and through. Again, following the instructions, shows to replace the upper mounts with these metal pieces that allow it not to squish, and then putting this bar in using the supplied hardware. Next, we're going to put a sticker on the inside of the right side, as we have done right here. And now we have to remove this piece and these two bolts down here, because we're going to replace those. I have previously broken this when I did the side stand, and I haven't replaced it, so it might be a fun time getting that out of there. But this is the part that should just very easily, with I believe a 12mm, we'll remove this basically plastic bolt that holds this display cover on, which covers the top of your two bolts here on the side. They'll come out, they're 12mm, and it should be pretty easy to put in the new mounts. Well, that really wasn't too bad. We have our engine guards on, we have the right side of the bike on, and we have the left side of the bike on. You guys can get a feel for how the Givi bars look and how they attach, both the right and left side. I do have to say I'm a pretty big fan of kind of how they've curved it out to really interface with the look of the bike. I do really like that. Now, I'll tell you, there were a couple things that weren't in the instructions that I did or that I found out that might make it a little bit easier to install these. First thing is that I was pleasantly surprised. I talked to a couple people about the Ducati factory bags and some of the other brands. A lot of them don't come with the plugs required to fill in basically all the bolt holes on the bike, which this kit did. The Givi kit does come with all the filler plugs for a clean look. So hats off to you, Givi. I think you're the manufacturer that makes the bags and has made bags for many of the Italian bikes out there, including Ducati, for quite a while. So I do like their stuff. I've used their crash bars before. The overall welds are not the prettiest thing, but not exactly gorgeous, but they are definitely strong looking. So I'm not worried about them. One of the other things that's not really pointed out is that you're removing those frame bolts that I showed you, the two lower bolts on both sides. These ones down here on both sides, you're removing both of those. If you have the bike on the center stand, it's going to shift things quite a bit and it's not going to line up. You have to take the bike off the center stand to do that. And as I've recommended in the past, get yourself some spools and a rear stand. Really helpful for jobs like this and getting stuff done on your bike. It's very useful to have around even if you do have a center stand. The last thing is regarding this step right here, where you are removing this bracket. This one right here was longer from the factory. So the bracket itself, you can see where it kind of normally comes down to, including all of this. And it looks like when they show this whole bike together, they have it back on top and it does not fit. So it doesn't really fit underneath it either. There's no bolt hole for this one here. It's just a cover for this bolt. So what I ended up doing is just taking a Dremel and basically cutting it off right about at that line. That way I can still have it on. It still looks kind of finished, but it basically doesn't overlap or bind with the crash bars that are in there now. I was a dum-dum when I did the exhaust and followed torque specs incorrectly, and I snapped this bolt before. Luckily I was able to get it back out. I'm gonna have to order a new one before I'm able to get this to seat back in there, but I'll go ahead and do that. I don't imagine that'll be too expensive from Ducati, but that's gonna stay off for now. Like I said, there's no torque specs in this kit, which was a little concerning, but everything you were able to get pretty snug. It wasn't really a problem. Always, when you're doing stuff like this, it's on both sides of the bike, kind of all interconnected, make sure you leave everything a little loose, all the connectors just a little bit loose, until you have it all completely connected. Once it's all connected, go ahead and tighten everything down, make sure you hit every bolt and tighten them all down. But so far, this thing looks pretty sturdy. From the top of the bike, like I said, it sticks out past the frame of the bike, so I think if it lays over, it's going to give us a pretty stable platform to make sure nothing gets crushed, radiators don't get crushed, your motor, it mounts enough hard points that I don't think the motor is in any sort of danger. And with this upgraded handguard on here, and you guys can watch this video again where I dropped the bike. You can see how far it goes over. I already didn't have contact with anything major because of this bar and because of these bags. So ultimately, some sort of bracket on the back to support these bags or block these bags may be useful, but at least the bags are cheaper than replacing motors or stuff that's going to leave you stranded out when you're on a trail or on the road. So these should be a great addition, great protection, and allow for some pretty awesome accessories to be mounted. Stay tuned for that. Well, all in all, I'm pretty happy with these. I think the install was pretty easy, it went pretty clean, and overall it looks pretty good. It does match the bike pretty well in my opinion. I don't regret these at all. Like I said, these are one of the cheaper options as well, and I will leave a link below to where I got them. It was just an eBay seller. There's a bunch of them out there, but these are definitely the cheapest overall that I've seen and still decent quality. Givi is a well-known brand. It does come with a 24-month warranty, so 2-year warranty with these things, same as the warranty on the bike if you get them both at the same time. It does come with their Givi, I assume these are like crash protector slider sort of things that put on that have their logo that you can put on the outsides. I'm just going to leave them blank because I think that looks a little bit better unbranded, and we'll have to find out exactly what kind of lights or foot pegs that we want to put on them. If you guys have any suggestions for those lights that you run or that you'd recommend for a setup like this, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to kind of research that. I've been leaning towards the Denali brand lights, but I'm not quite sure exactly how big I want to go or what specifically I'm looking for. Any input certainly would be helpful. As always, thanks for watching the channel. Hope you found this information useful. If you have any questions about the install or why I did what I did here, why I went with this particular brand, let me know in the comments below. I'll try and respond to as many as I can. Appreciate everybody watching. If you haven't already, like I said, hit that like button and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.